will be revealed shortly, but welcome to an unexpected Journeyman's Tales. Well, I did say at the end of the last video that potentially that was going to be my last trip for a while. I assumed, in all honesty, that the treatment would have started with the NHS by now, but what with extended Easter holidays and all the rest of it, without getting into the politics of it all, the treatment's not going to start now until nearly the end of May. So it kind of gives me a few weeks to cram in as much fishing as I possibly can. So here I am up on Unity on the Oxford Syndicate for a couple of days. I think I'm going to have a rest week next week, and then we've got a few days up at Blackthorn Fishery. Charlie, the owner, has managed to find us a bit of space, so we're going up there. And then the following week was the trip I had arranged with Kerry, which I pulled out of, and another couple of boys are going with Kerry, but one of them's only doing half a week, so I'm going to sneak up there and do the back half of the week up there. And that is literally taking me up to when the chemo starts. And the chemo, I've found out now, is going to be running for more or less 9 weeks. So there'll be no fishing at all for 9 weeks, no video. So I'm trying to cram in as much as I possibly can. Now I'm on actually the same swim I was on last time I was up on Unity when I had a few fish. The wind, however, is hacking in here fairly moderately, but it's all a bit easterly, northeasterly. There's a bit of a chill to it. It's quite warm when the sun's on your back, but other than that, there's a bit of a chill to it. But I found a clear spot slightly closer in than last time, and I put a bit of bait over it, got the 3 rods out, and I'm just going to keep trickling in a little bit of bait every now and again, just to keep something moving through the water, and hopefully something will turn up like it did last time. When I was fishing this swim last time, I think I could have put a bit more bait out had I had it with me, and possibly had a few more fish, but it's a difficult balance when they're only just beginning to wake up and start feeding. You don't want to be piling it in, so I didn't bring a huge amount. I bought a little bit more this time, and I'm just going to keep putting it in on a fairly regular basis, so something's dropping through the water on and off every few hours. Not a huge amount, but just keep something moving in there. Hopefully it'll catch somebody's eye, and I think once they get on the feed and find it, we should be all right. Anyway, I'm trying to relax. It's getting harder and harder, got to be honest, to put all this kit together and do the drive. So the relaxed time seems to take longer. So I'm going to sit here, have a couple of cups of coffee, and see what the evening and the night brings. Hopefully, some good results. Well, we're now well into the second afternoon, and as you probably be able to see, I've moved swims. It was very quiet night, apart from a coot that kept diving on the left-hand rod, and I couldn't really use the torch on it because there's people fishing opposite me. And then first thing this morning, the right-hand rod roared off, and as I got to the rod, it boiled on the surface, and what turned out to be a coot, but he hadn't picked the bait up. He somehow lassoed his neck with the line, not even the leader, which fortunately in some regard he came in quite quietly then, because the more he resisted, the more he was choking himself. But he came in, sat at the end of the swim quite quietly while I unwrapped him, and he swam off on his merry way. And I put the rod back out again, had a cup of coffee, and the more I was sitting there thinking about it, the more I was being drawn to go somewhere else. So I brought the rods in, went for a walk, and I ended up looking round Yeoman's. Now I'm on the island swim. Nobody'd fished it last night because it was empty when I got here. And I thought, well, at least no bait's gone in. It's in the lee of this northeasterly wind that's blowing. I mean, when the sun's out, it's really warm, but when you catch the wind, it's quite cold. But so we're in the lee of it. I'll put a bit of spum out at the bottom of the island shelf, and the middle rod and the right hand rod are fishing at the bottom of the shelf, and the left hand rod is fishing quite tight to the island. And hopefully something might happen here. The guy off to my left fishing has had two, but he's been here a good few days now, so not exactly climbing up the rods. I don't know about anybody else. The guy to my right I did speak to, he lost one first thing this morning from close range. But it feels better here. It was worth the effort. I forget how hard it is to move swims because I don't do it that often these days. But it was well worth the effort, I think. Whether it pays off, we'll find out fairly soon. Well, as you can see, I've changed swim again. This time about 110 miles further north in Oswestry at Blackthorn Fishery. Arrived a couple of hours ago and got all the rods sorted out. Put a bit of bait in, not a huge amount, because like most fisheries these days, they're constantly being fished. When one person moves in, the next person moves out, as it were. So the right hand rod is right off to my right in the corner where I've had fish on previous trips. I put some, not a huge amount, a couple of spoonfuls of TT crumb and some corn over it. The middle rod is on the far reed beds, about just over 15 wraps. There I put some chopped, not the crumb, but some chopped TT with some corn. And the right hand rod is fished with a Indian spice pop up, and the middle rod is with a TT bottom bait tipped with a bit of plastic corn. And the left hand rod, I didn't really have any firm ideas where I wanted to put that, but I have seen one fish top, not a huge fish, about 10 wraps out directly in front of me. So I've put the left hand rod out there with just a bag attached to it again. It's a Indian spice pop up and a bag of pellet and crumb, and I'll just leave that there for a while and just monitor the water, see what's going on. The only other thing I've seen is something swirl, but right out in the middle of, which is out of my water. But not long after we got here, the bloke in the South Lodge had a fish, obviously a PB, because there were buckets of water flying about. I've got no idea at the moment how much it weighed, but so they're coming out, and there's a nice southwesterly wind hacking in to this bank. You can probably see it behind me. Hopefully something will come around dusk, if not through the night, and then I can work out where I'm positively going to do a bit of baiting with that left hand rod, which is going to be a rover at the moment. Anyway, full of confidence at the moment. Well, it's coming up to midday on Tuesday now, and I thought I'd better give you a bit of an update, but not really anything to tell you. The showing that was going on last night didn't materialise for me anyway. The cabin opposite had 2 yesterday and 1 this morning, but the bigger shows were way out of my water, unfortunately. Yeah, absolutely nothing. So what I've done now is baited up in front of me. I'm going to put 2 rods on that tonight. I've got the right hand rod is fishing off the dot island, back of the dot island at the moment, but the rod's up the bank, and I'm not going to leave it there overnight. It's okay to do it by all accounts, but it doesn't sit well with me. So I'm going to leave 1 rod to the reed bed on the other side and fish 2 on the baited spot, and hope any more of those showing fish actually get their head down and produce something. But other than that, all very quiet. I mean, the sun keeps coming in, it's boiling up when it's out, but when the sun disappears it's quite chilly because of the wind. But we're getting the odd shower every now and again. I don't know. It's turning into a talking shop and I don't like it. Right, 2 o'clock in the morning and the left hand rod's gone off. Thrilled. And just after I'd weighed this and put it in the retainer, the middle rod went off, and that's sitting in the landing net waiting to be weighed. There she goes. Look at that. 36 pounds, 4 ounces of sheer joy. I am delighted. Oh, talk about going through a slow patch. I think we've redeemed ourselves a bit. Excellent. Whoa, baby. Whoa, 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 whoa. As you can see, she's got a bit of a sore on her there. I put a bit of antiseptic on it before she goes back. Thrilled a bit, did I say that? Right, put a bit of antiseptic on this flank, get her back, and weigh the other one. Happy times. Far rod went off. And 26 turned up from the far margin. Absolutely thrilled. Not far off a double take. Right, I need to get a bit of spot out, and I need to get this rod get her back in the water, because it's all got a bit hectic. We're thrilled with the progress we've made. Right, cup of coffee and a lie down, I think. Well, since I caught those 2 fish last night, it's been tipping down with rain. It tipped through the rest of the night, and we're now into sort of early afternoon, and it's been dry for about an hour. Now, I did put a couple of spods out after I had those fish. One came to the left-hand rod, which is out towards the middle of the lake, and the one came to the far rod on the far bank. So what I did halfway through the morning in the rain was to move the rod that was down the bank behind the island out into the main body of water where most of the fish have been coming from, to the lodge opposite me. Most of the shows have been out of my water, but they've obviously drifted over to my side for one of the fish last night, so I'm going to put a bit more bait out later on, but I'm certainly going to fish 2 rods over there tonight and continue with the one on the far margin. But the fish have been coming to a new rig. I'm using now Nash's trigger link, which is an elasticated braid, quite high tech, I suppose. Really, I mean, I've shown you before the bow rig that I've had success on up here, and I kind of like using that. I mean, I've got a real hang up with barbless hooks, which is the rule on here, as many waters these days. So I quite like that elasticated bit there. And this Nash trigger link will do exactly the same thing. What it does is, when it's dry, it's fixed length, but when it's wet, it shrinks. So to get your rig your right length, you have to kind of work out the dry length compared to what it shrinks to. Now, more luck than judgment, really. I worked it out. If I tied the length to 27 centimetres, tied a figure 8 loop in the other end, which took it down to about 26 centimetres. Now, when it wet, it shrunk down to 18 centimetres, which is about the length of the rigs I like to use. And it will expand whilst it's wet back to 25 centimetres, which is more or less what the bow rig was giving you. So if you're having problems or don't fancy doing that trick with the elastic in the braid where you've got to thread it through, and you want to try it, I think it's been around a fair old while now, but I mean, I'm as always slow to the party, but it's a much quicker and easier rig to do. And I'm just fishing it spinner rig style with a pop-up on it, a bit of putty halfway down, and I tend to use a product called mud, which is basically fuller's earth paste, and I rub it up and down to help the braid sink. Now, when I started, I've been using the Indian Spice yellow pop-ups from Probaits UK, and now they're quite a small pop-up, and there's a lot of corn in the mix, so I thought that might replicate the corn, but it hadn't produced anything. So to try and get some kind of action, I changed over to these Probate UK specials, and that's what the 36 came on. The 26 came on a trimmed down on my old rig, actually, my old wafter rig with the extended shrink tube on it. It was a cut down TT with a bit of corn on this, again fishing in a mix of corn and crumb TT and chopped up boilies. And I've trimmed the round boilie down to a barrel shape. I don't know why, I just got a fetish about the barrel shape being slightly better, a bit more awkward maybe for them to eject when they're sucking and blowing. But it's a confidence thing more than anything else. I've got no proof that it makes it any better, but it makes me feel better. So that's what's been taking the fish. So tonight, a bit more spom's going to go out, which is the mix of the TT crumb and chopped boilie with quite a bit of corn in the mix. And same as last night, except 2 rods are going to be on the spot, and hopefully we'll kick into action again. Anyway, it's time for a coffee and a bit more of a relaxing, because not a lot of sleep happened after that fish last night. I was a bit wide awake, really. Anyway, I'll catch you later. Well, good morning. Unfortunately for this side of the lake, another quiet one. That 2 o'clock in the morning boogie didn't happen for me. But the wind died off completely last night. The moon came out, so it was quite a bright night, but flat calm. Around the sort of early evening they were showing, mainly out of my water, but they're definitely there in quite substantial numbers, but just not in my range, unfortunately. But there's the odd one or two sticking their heads up over the baited area, but they are, I don't know what it is, but they're not getting their heads down. I'm using tried and tested rigs, I'm using tried and tested baits, I'm trying the odd one that's been recommended by the owner. It's not happening, unfortunately, but we've got one more day, one more night left. Wind's picking up again this morning. It's quite chilly when the sun's away, but it's supposed to be brightening up later. But the conditions really are quite perfect. Unfortunately, it's just not happening. Well, not happening over here. But they're there to be had. And we'll give it our best shot to try and get something before we have to leave. Well, we're coming into the last evening now, and the wind is picking up big time again, coming in from southwesterly. I have rebaited the far margin. Again, I put, I don't know, a dozen spombs out into the middle. I got 2 rods out. Well, that was the intention, was to put 2 rods out in the middle and one on that right hand margin, but about 20 minutes ago, quite a large fish just stuck his head up between me and the little dot island off to my left. So I brought in the left hand rod, dropped it out there. I'm in 2 minds whether to put a little bit of corn out there overnight and just leave it there. Maybe they're getting driven over here. I haven't seen, I haven't seen a lot. I mean, it's getting to the time where they should start showing, if they've been showing, but most of them have been not far from the front of the other lodge, and if you really want to see some quality fish, I recommend you go onto the Blackthorn site, because Marcus has been, I think he's had 9, maybe 10 over there to £40 this week, which kind of really shows the potential of this place. And there's some cracking photos of some cracking fish that came out last week. Anyway, as I say, we're coming into the last evening. That's the plan. Everything is set up apart from my indecision on the left-hand rod, but I'll come to some agreement with that in my head. We're due for a bit of rain later on, but it should be dry to pack up in the morning, which will be fairly novel. One thing, I did a quick video, I haven't put it on as yet, but when I brought the left-hand rod in this morning to refresh it, it was attached to this. It's obviously been out there for a bit of a while. Now, the lead went down with a good donk. Well, it went down on firm ground, or it went down on this, because I didn't pull into it. It was there as soon as I picked the rod up. So that rod hadn't been fishing all night, which is where my dilemma over the left-hand rod is. If it hadn't been attached to this, it might have caught something. You don't know, do you? But it's not in a swim now. It's back on the bank. I've got decisions to make. The conditions are perfect. Conditions have been perfect all week. I'm not ungrateful. I've had a 36 and a 26. But you just feel really should have caught a few more. But there we are. We'll see. We've got one night left. Hopefully they'll all swim over this side tonight. I know Marcus is going shortly. But I mean, I'd have thought they'd have the pressure from both sides. They'd have bounced backwards and forwards, but that's not happened. They've stayed in that spot. But I'm rambling. We'll see. Hopefully, we'll catch up with you in the middle of the night. If not, I'll see you in the morning. And that's the spawn rig, if you're interested. Well, all too quickly, the last morning is here, and it's the first coffee of the day, which tells you nothing happened last night. In fact, I slept quite well actually, which is a bit unfortunate because they were showing, well, near and far last night. But there we are, that's it. Time is fast evaporating, and I'm going to finish the first coffee of the day, have the second coffee of the day, and then start packing up, I think. Slowly, anyway. But yeah, I mean, I had a couple of really nice fish. Most pleased with that. You always want more, don't you? But I mean, if you have a look, and I recommend you do, have a look on the Blackthorn Fishery site. You'll see some of the fish that came out this week from the lodge opposite me. Marcus had a cracking session. As I said yesterday, he's a fish to 40 pounds, and there's others from recent sessions on there which give a true reflection of the quality of the fishing in this place. And no, I'm not sponsored, no, I'm not getting a freebie, I'm just being nice to people who are nice to me. And something for the future. Charlie's in the process of building another lodge on another water. I think it's going to be just one lodge on about an acre and a half, which no doubt in the fullness of time will be the same quality as this water is. But at least I didn't blank this time. The last couple of trips on here I've blanked. I found it very hard for some reason or other. Started off really well when I first started fishing here, but for some reason or other it petered off to nothing. But I'm back in the game. Restored a bit of reputation. Back in the 30 club. I'm pleased with that. So I'm going to go home happy man. And I'm looking forward to a couple of days rest, and then the final trip off to Chad Lakes next week with Kerry and the boys before it all kicks off. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all again soon. Cheers for now.